Corey and Rachel. So Corey, could you just say hi if you're online and make sure that we have an audio check with you? So Corey, we are not hearing you. If you could unmute your mic if you're there for us. And while we wait for Corey, we're going to do a check-in with Rachel. Rachel, or could you unmute and say hi?
Right here, Ed, and I'm here with Kevin Kirsch, my colleague who's a network engineer here at West OSHA.
Awesome, great. We'll stand by. We're going to try and get Corey online here, and then we'll get started with introductions. So Corey, could you just do a quick sound check for us again, please?
Testing.
All right, we got you.
We're on the microphone, sorry.
No worries. This is the beauty and magic of technology. So let's start with introductions. So I know we've already heard from Dr. Annette Smith, but let's go ahead and have her do a formal introduction, then we'll do Corey, and then we'll do Rachel.
So good morning. My name's Annette Smith, and I'm the director of what we call instructional technology services at DPI. It's very similar to being a tech director in a school district. And I say that because I was a technology director in 2 different school districts in our state. I was the director of technology in the Milton School District and then in the West OSHA School District, where Rachel and Kevin are right now. I also was the tech director for a small internet company. Some of you might be familiar with teachingbooks.net, which is one of our BadgerLink resources. And way before that, long time ago, I was a school librarian and a classroom teacher. So broad range of experiences there. And now I get to work here at the DPI and work with them around their infrastructure, around our help desk, our data privacy, security, cybersecurity. Also on our team is the web, our web page manager, our E-rate, broadband, interoperability. You know this, especially if you're in a small district. You catch all the things that nobody else has ownership of. So that's exactly what I do here at DPI.
Awesome, thank you, Annette. Corey, would you mind giving us an introduction and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Corey Colts. I'm the Director of Technology for CISA 5. I've been at CISA 5 now for 4 years. Previously, I was at the Wautoma Area School District for 9 years, I believe, pretty close, as a Director of Technology there again. Before that was River Ridge School District down in Southwest Wisconsin, CISA 3 area. And before that, I started actually in education at Marshfield School District as the computer and network specialist, and we actually were one of the first school districts on the WISNet platform at that time, where we didn't actually even need a firewall at that time. It was just a router connection, and at that point you didn't really have to worry about it, but that changed quickly.
Yeah, the world has certainly changed.
At CISA 5, I oversee a team of 3 people that oversee 4 school districts right now, all under 1,000 students, along with 6 alternative schools that we oversee as well. Staff members, we have well over 200 here at CISA 5 ourselves, so I'm spread pretty much over various areas, supporting our schools and everything. And then I oversee our tech directors group that we meet quarterly in the area.
Awesome, thanks, Corey. And then let's go to Rachel in West OSHA. Rachel, would you mind introducing yourself and a little bit about yourself and your guest?
Sure. My name is Rachel Shumlin. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology at West OSHA Central. We're a union high school located between Kenosha and Lake Geneva along the Illinois border. And we have just over 1,100 students who come to us from 5 separate kindergarten to 8th grade school districts. We are in our 7th year of being one-to-one through BYOD. And so when we get into sharing some more information about securing our data, that makes us, that makes it a unique situation for us. We're also 12 years into offering blended courses for students. We have students take them during the summer and also during the school year. So a large piece for us is supporting both the business side and the instructional side of technology and data security. And I'll let Kevin introduce himself.
I'm Kevin Kirsch. I am the network engineer here at West OSHA Central High School. I've been doing operations IT for schools for about 6 years now. And my role at West OSHA is to go and maintain the infrastructure along with dealing with any sort of data related material as well.
Great, thanks everyone. So I appreciate everyone's time. We're going to get kind of rolling into our next session, which is really focused on more around data security practices. So we're going to get our first question rolling. We're going to start with Annette. And we talked last hour about data privacy. And so this question is for Annette. Data security overview, and how is it different from data privacy?
And this is something that we talked a little bit about in the first session, but I'm going to just review some of what we talked about. And that's the fact that we're responsible, and we talk a lot about keeping our data private. So not sharing student social security numbers, making sure that, you know, our companies aren't sharing our students' information, our staff's information, and all of the different policies and procedures and resources that we put in place to protect that data. And that's one piece of the puzzle. And then I think of it as a ring, right? So that's our inner ring. What do we do to keep that data private? And then there's the next ring out, which is how do we secure that data? What tools, what resources do we have in place that keeps that data, that automates that security, that monitors who's accessing that data, that just gives us that extra layer of protection? And we have so many tools and resources at our fingertips now that we can use to secure our systems, so that your neighbor isn't looking at your students' data at school, so that the school secretary is not accessing information about a student that they don't need for their job. So putting in things like multi-factor authentication or identifying roles securely so that people are not getting to that data. It's a very different set of tools and resources that you would use in a different process when you think about securing that data. Also, as Corey mentioned, the world has changed, right? So it used to be that we could just protect that data internally. I've been in this field for, well, a lot of years, over 20, and much like Corey, when I started, we did think about, we don't want the secretary looking at everybody's data, but we really didn't think about how people were going to come from the outside and the value of that data. And so the tools and the security practices have just improved and improved over time. And that's what we're hoping we can talk to and really think through. And then the last piece in our conversation today, and in that ring that I keep talking about, is that cybersecurity piece. So how do we secure our infrastructure so that not only is our data private and secure, but so that it is accessible when we need it, right? So those are kind of those three rings that we're talking about today.
Awesome, thanks, Annette. And I would certainly offer up for Rachel and Corey, if there's anything you'd like to expand upon on that at all, please feel free. I'll go to Rachel first.
So are you jumping into the question about securing data? And
No.
Okay.
No, just that it kind of outline the difference between data security and data privacy, and I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to expand on.
Sure. I would just like to say that we always start with the why, and really building ownership within the district, because this is an integrated leadership topic. It involves the admin team, the district admin, school admin, secretarial staff, business office, HR, classroom teachers, support staff, and IT all working together. And we have to approach this, or we've chosen to approach this, I should say, with a growth mindset. So engaging all of these different stakeholders in the conversations, but then also really starting with what we can find that's manageable and then moving forward. So we're doing more this year than we did last year, and last year was more than the year before. Thank you.
Great. Corey, is there anything you'd like to expand on?
Just a little. Like I mentioned, when I first started, we didn't really have that mindset of really needing to protect our data. We're just like connected, and we're all excited for that resource. And we were kind of restricted on where we provided that internet connection just to the business classrooms and tech ed and the offices and stuff like that. But that has changed dramatically over the years, from viruses to malware to what we're dealing with today with the phishing and everything. And today we're focused on like the smaller school districts with the tight budgets and trying to find resources and trying to let our administration know, and even board members really on how important it is that we need to secure this. And so it's just a matter of, the best use for our money and making sure that we communicate well with them.
Great. Thanks, Corey. And yeah, I think one of those great resources is the fact that we're all here today and that we're all working together and trying to share resources. So hopefully at the end of the day, everybody walks away with some good resources. So the next question, we're going to start with Corey and then go to Rachel, then Annette. How do you secure data and who is involved in the work? So Corey, would you like to start us off with that?
Sure. Well, I have a team that we actually as I mentioned, oversee 4 school districts plus some additional. We have myself that I oversee the whole group along with the network specialist and a couple technicians. We also have a technology integrator that does training to make sure people understand data privacy and all that. But it is different per location that we support. At CISA 5 ourselves, we have a few more resources available to help protect our data with like a better next-gen firewall versus some of the other schools that they might just be using basic firewall that's integrated with the content filter just because it's included for free, along with backup systems, Veeam, Backupify, so on and so forth. I'm just looking over my notes as I'm kind of going. I guess if we want to continue on, I'll look at some more and maybe chime in.
Absolutely. So I'll circle back to you here at the end and give you an opportunity at the end, Corey. Rachel, would you like to kind of outline like how you secure data and who's involved in the work in your district?
Sure. When we sat down to prepare for the webinar today, we were thinking about our story and sharing our story. And we know we're not necessarily the experts, but we hope that people will ask us questions throughout so that we can learn and grow as well. We did just decide to divide up what we're doing to secure our data into sort of established procedures and established things that are new to us this year that we're doing, what our next steps are going to be, and then what our continuing challenges are. So in regards to securing the data and who's involved in that work, like I already stated, it's an integrated leadership topic, and so we need to make sure that we're involving all of the stakeholders with the work. That starts with regular review of our board policies. We use Neola for our board policies, and they're on a schedule for review. We also have the superintendent, registrar, and director of IT completed webinar training on legal compliance with some of the different laws. And now that we have a new superintendent this year and a new principal, and so that's something we'll be looking to circle back on and provide more training. We did set up, was it 2 years ago? We set up secure release printing with PaperCut when we renewed our copier. When we renewed our copier lease, we built PaperCut into that and then set up secure release for printing, which helps with data security. With our unique setup with being one-to-one with the BYOD, and then concerns about people's passwords and multiple passwords on systems, we have some drivers through Consensus that run behind the scenes that sync that data and push data between systems. And that helps because there's fewer passwords for people to remember. It makes it easier for us to manage the systems as well. We are moving where we can from LDAP to single sign-on when it's possible. And we have password management practices. Every 90 days, users are required to reset their password. And I know that we are also requiring two-factor authentication with G Suite. And we still require the password resets because not all of our systems have the functionality of two-factor. So that's why we're still doing the password resets. But we're requiring two-factor for faculty and staff, and it is an optional optional setting for students. As far as our network, we have a segmented network, which adds complexity with securing the data. And that's because we have to have the BYOD and the secure network running simultaneously. We, 2 years ago, also 1 to 2 years ago, moved from site-based hosting of Infinite Campus and Skyward to being cloud hosted for both of those systems. And that was a decision that also not only saved us money, but then improved security for us through the hosting services. We have the hard drives encrypted for our HR and business staff using Microsoft BitLocker. And then I'd like to turn it over to Kevin to talk a little bit more about network monitoring and some pieces with the infrastructure.
Yeah, so when we look at data, keeping data secure, it's not only just the end users, but also the infrastructure that we have within the building. And when we have that sort of data, we need to have, for instance, network monitoring tools. We use syslog capturing servers to go and have that data that we can go and have securely placed somewhere, and also to go and review if there's an incident later. Cacti is an open source tool that we use, which allows us to go and monitor our network bandwidth that's utilized. Gives us kind of a heads up more into the cybersecurity arena of things if there's something currently happening on our network. And we have other proprietary tools that goes and backs up our switching, our server infrastructure, in case there is a failure or some sort of malicious attack that may cause us to lose that currently running configuration. We do also utilize software inventory, so that allows us to go and make sure that what we have on end user devices are up to date, and that will make sure that our data that is being used with those pieces of software are being secured. And we do also do patching on a regular basis for our end user Windows devices, and we do firmware updates whenever possible for our infrastructure as well. And then we do backups regularly. We do backups with a disk-to-disk type currently, so it is on premises. And we do also archive our backups to a different location than when our backups are performed. One of the challenges that we have currently is that archiving is currently placed somewhere else into the building. And we do look in a little bit later here, we'll discuss one of our things that we're seeking to go and improve in the future with our backups.
Mm-hmm. And we've been doing a lot of work in this area as far as researching best practices and trying to improve what we're doing. So last year we worked with Roger Yin at UW Whitewater, and I think he's on the call this afternoon in another session, but he had a group of students that we worked with, and they performed an internal and external assessment of our vulnerabilities. We didn't do any social engineering with that, but the students, the higher ed students, got some really great experience out in the workplace, and then we got some helpful information that we were able to go back and tighten things up where we needed to. New this year, you heard about in the first session, the Wisconsin Digital Learning Collaborative. We're working to secure contracts with vendors and those Exhibit E agreements. We're also collaborating with Waukesha County Technical College. There's a group of technology directors from CISA 1 that work together to build some courses on data security, and then also technology recovery planning, business continuity planning. So Kevin and I are in the process of updating and revising our business continuity plan. And then, I lost my place. And then the ISAC. Do you want to share anything with that?
We currently went and recently became a member of the MS ISAC group, and that provides it is free and provides best practice webinars and briefs of known vulnerabilities.
And I think Ed, it was either you or Dr. Smith that had a link to ISAC in one of your email updates, and we followed up on that, and it's been helpful information that comes our way to follow up on. So.
And before somebody types in the window, it is a resource at the end of this slideshow also. So it's there, and we've got the link.
Thank you. With that business continuity planning that we're doing and working on our data security, one of our next steps is going to be doing a tabletop training exercise with the superintendent, school admin, HR, business, secretarial support, classroom teachers, in which we're going to simulate a crypto ransomware attack. And so we're going to be doing that in the next, I would say, next month or so. And then we also have some other user education pieces that we're putting into place. And I'll let Kevin share a little bit more about that.
We're looking to go and deploy KnowBe4, which has been mentioned earlier in this, to our end users to try and make sure that they are educated on common phishing attacks that are happening through emails nowadays. And we hope to gain some very valuable information on that to determine how to further on go and provide better education or more pinpointed education for people that that utilize this KnowBe4 service. We're also looking at going to implement 802.1x eventually. That should go and give us a little bit more security on our wired and wireless network than what we currently have at this time. And as mentioned earlier as well, we're looking to go and try and have our backup solution also perhaps send data or pertinent data to the cloud, so that if there is a incident where the building itself has a catastrophic issue, we still have our data up in the cloud available in a secured location. And lastly, we're trying to go and have a test network built here so that we can go and make sure that our backups can actually be restored and that they're functioning properly.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to turn the question over to Dr. Smith, and then Corey, we can circle back to you. Dr. Smith, how do you secure data, and who is involved in that work at the state level?
So I'm going to use some of the things that Rachel and Kevin shared. If you saw me reaching, one of the things I keep in my office are the CIS controls. So the Center for Internet Security has a top 5 list, and then a top 16 and a top 20 list of recommended things that you should do to secure your data in a district. And Kevin and Rachel just checked right through those. So like number 1 is access inventory and access control to your hardware. Number 2, inventory and access control to your software. You talked to both of those. Continuous vulnerability management, so that vulnerability scans of your network, the auditing and the monitoring, all things that we also do here and that we're working on. Control the use of admin privileges. You didn't speak to that, but you did speak to multi-factor authentication. So here in our office, we're really strict about admin privileges. If you need it for your work, which many people here do, we've got developers and data warehouse people in our ISI team, that's a separate login from their day-to-day work. So it's not like it just because you're a technician, you get admin rights at all times. You have to have multi-factor authentication, you have to have a reason for requesting it, and then you log in with admin rights. So really controlling that, that's number 4 on the CIS controls. Number 5 is secure configuration, hardware, software, mobile devices. We here are going to start rolling out Intune, which is the Microsoft mobile management and security tool that they're just releasing. So we're just starting to put that in place because we have, we give mobile devices to our staff to use, but we also know they're using their phones and they're using all different kinds of ways to connect to their email, to get to data. And we don't have any way to know if those devices are secure. We don't know if your phone is properly secured. We don't know if your home computer has viruses on it. So Intune will allow us to do some checking and blocking of those kinds of things. So rolling out those types of resources. And number 6 has to do with maintenance, monitoring, and again, analysis and auditing. We just set up a process where we have someone who's going to be reading certain logs every single morning to check for certain things, so we know what updates we have to do. I heard people mention patching. We take that very seriously. Of course, we have Patching Tuesday. We've got all kinds of patching in place that we do. I hope that you saw one of the things that here at DPI we're doing to help is we are building out an application that will have critical warnings in it, and then it will notify the tech person in that district to say, hey, please go log in here and you can see that critical warning. So for the last 2 warnings, the Windows patching and then the RICO patching, we sent out an email. And we know that many of your districts, of course, block those as spam and junk, so they're not getting to people. So this is our solution so that DPI can be warning you when we hear from MFs, Isaac, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice. They all notify us, DET, the Wisconsin Department of Enterprise Technology, and then we make sure that we are getting you that information in a timely way. So that we should start testing that app in about a week or 2, and then it'll roll out to you. So again, we're doing things internally to secure the data, following those SIS controls, the NIST standards. We get audited by the state every year, and they give us recommendations for improvements. We also every other year do an external audit of our systems. We pay to have somebody come in and do that. Like you used Roger, we pay for that, and then we go through. This year we just finished up doing our security assessment, and we're implementing those recommendations. So we do what you do, and then we do things to try to help and support you.
Great, thanks, Annette. And Corey, I'd like to just kind of come back around to you and see if there's anything you'd like to add to the conversation.
Well, as Kevin mentioned about the patching and the backups and everything, I'd like to reiterate that we do local backups, and then we're also implementing cloud-based backups for offsite. So we'll have them in 2 different locations. We're also we have also implemented Backupify for our Google account. So in case anything strange does happen, we do have that in place for not everybody, but for the key players at least CISA 5. 2-factor authentication. I know there's been a lot of talk about using your phones and people able to get that number intercepted or whatever. But I use like Authy and Google Authenticator, and I also have the key. And then looking at, go ahead.
Corey, here we also have tokens because people who don't want it on their cell phones, so they can get a token for MFA.
Yep. Let's see. Oh, also we are Azure AD and Intune ourselves at CISA 5. We are looking at pushing the schools that we support that. It's very cost effective, especially for the MDM solution that Intune does provide. It's not as feature rich as Google right now, but it does allow you to do things like automatic encryption of your drives with BitLocker and pushing out passwords, making changes. Enrolling the device kind of like a Chromebook and everything. So Microsoft has been making strides on that. I think our biggest issue right now, while we have enrolled into MDM, is like Apple iPads and stuff like that. The device themselves are pretty secure, but for controlling and stuff like that, it's kind of limited based on, I think, what we're used to now with Google.
But it's good that you mentioned that regardless of what you have in your district, these tools are available. If you're using Google, if you're using Microsoft, if whatever you're using, you should be looking for those tools that are included in that service.
Mm-hmm. Also, this was touched on data privacy a little bit, but cloud hosting for the financial and SIS and library media systems, I was a big supporter of hosting it locally until we had a problem with our data where a virus got on the server. And then we kind of pushed that out to the cloud pretty quickly. And then we leave that, well, not fully onto the provider, but as Annette mentioned, that you really want to look at the contracts that the provider is offering you where it's being hosted and make sure that your data is being secured and backed up and everything. So in case there is an incident, that they're held liable for that instead of it put back onto you. And then next gen firewalls, a lot of the basic firewalls don't support a lot of the advanced things like application filtering, deep packet inspection, and intrusion prevention. So we're pushing more of that into the schools to make sure that they have those enabled, and we at least try and get that at the door when they try and come in and try and break into the network. Unfortunately, because of our resources are kind of limited, like most of the little schools, it's hard to be proactive on seeing the logs and all that all the time. But we're trying to do a better job at that.
So Corey, can you speak to, you have a model there in the CISAs where you provide a backup service. You provide some of these services for districts that can't purchase them on their own. Can you speak a little bit to that? Because I know we have a number of small districts that use a vendor or a third party to help them with some of these services.
Yes, we currently provide IT services to school districts, usually districts that can't afford a full-time person, that they just want to contract like so many days or so many hours a week, a year or whatever. We're expanding more into the networking aspect of that, and we've teamed up with WIROC or WIRCC to help with the data security and privacy, or the data security, cybersecurity part of that, for discounts on that portion of it. But that's actually more available to, I think, all school districts that are a member of WIROC. But yeah, we're also looking at, we started implementing offsite backups for those school districts into the cloud through us as a provider, and just making it as easy as we can. They have the local backup, but in case something happens, they have that in the cloud as well. Besides just this, what we offer here, we have our trainings through our technology integration that many schools have brought Aggie Salter on site to do the different trainings. I think she actually said she had one this evening at a school. We have a tech directors group that we meet quarterly, and we usually have very good turnouts, and we discuss, well, cybersecurity and data privacy has been big topics for the past 2 years. So we actually had Annette and Bill Nash come this past week to talk about the state cybersecurity team and what they can do to help us. And then also looking at the conferences like Brainstorm, COSIN, Governor's Cybersecurity Conference. Those have all been great, attending and getting information and bringing that back to the schools that we help, and then the CISA 5 itself, all the districts. Yeah, that's, I think, pretty close to a lot of the services we currently.
Great.
So before we move on to the next question, we've got one in the chat, and I don't know if we have any others. Do we want to do any of the
We
questions?
can take a question right now. We have time.
Okay. So David asked, is anyone questioning single sign-on with a breach to one username and password having access to all? So is anyone concerned about when you have single sign-on, if they get that, then they get access to everything, and how are you addressing it? Corey, Rachel, Kevin?
I would be under the impression that if such a breach happened, it's better to go and to have that person's account be reset in one location and have it propagate out to the rest of the areas that it's being used, than to try and have separate accounts, reset every separate account that person's using.
Yeah, we also, putting two-factor authentication in place was a process, and we also had users that didn't want to authenticate through their cell phones, so we purchased some YubiKeys, and they were using those, and most everybody's now on their phone, but it was kind of like a baby step there for people that didn't want to have it authenticate through their cell phone, or they couldn't because they didn't have reception in their classroom or part of the building. I
think from our perspective, it also helps to prevent those documents that were on desktops that listed everybody's password. So if somebody got access or they left their computer, I mean, a lot of years in this field, and you'd either find them on their desktops or the sticky notes. And the sticky notes aren't nearly as bad as having a document on a digital document, but by giving them single sign-on and by doing things like multi-factor and some of these other things to secure that, it took care of some of the other security issues that came along with passwords.
We have in place also, like, we're mostly Google. So with Google Admin, you can set up information to be sent, and I receive any weird login instance, and then I usually go out and reach out to the person that I was notified about, and then I also have created a document on how to go and secure your Google account with the different steps in adding the two-factor, changing the password, and disconnecting any apps or locations, removing the login from locations that they are not familiar with. So we push that out whenever we get that notice.
Great, thanks, Corey. I think this is a perfect time to segue. We've talked about a lot of utilities, a lot of services, a lot of acronyms. So the next question is semi-obvious. How do you stay up to date on monitoring and budget and keep your data secure? So we're going to open this one up to Rachel first, Corey second, and then Annette. So Rachel, how do you do all this?
Yeah, we do what we can. Like I said, we have a growth mindset. As far as budgeting, we use a creative combination of our general fund, our Fund 10 E-rate funding. We also are eligible for the Teach Infrastructure grants. And then we're looking into creatively using Title IV funding. I think the big piece, one of the things that happened early on when I started at Westosha is I went to the superintendent and I asked, can we have a capital project to make infrastructure updates? And I was told no, that we need to work within our existing budget. And so 4 years ago, that led us to some conversations. We went through and we renegotiated every single contract, every single line item on our budget to find cost savings. Sorry, there's passing time here. We also sat down and worked up a plan we were very careful in our planning for the improvements over multiple years and trying to figure out, using all these different buckets of funding, what we could pull from where and what the timeline would be for that, so that we'd have a manageable cycle for both infrastructure and then end user equipment. We didn't want to have old equipment out there and being used because that's a security risk as well.
Great. So let's move on over, unless Kevin, you have anything to add? Otherwise, we'll move on to Corey.
No, I have nothing to add.
All right, Corey, you're up.
E-rate has been great for most items. Thankfully, it's been renewed for the next round, and I believe that they're looking at actually adding some additional items to what's available for Cat 2, like hopefully full firewalls and things like that we all need. But for budget and everything, at each of our schools, we're looking at, or we've actually provided a 5-year plan on infrastructure upgrades on what we see. Servers, SANs, backups. Most of them were using Unitrends in the past, so we've upgraded all of them, actually most of them, to Veeam along with brand new SAN. We really look at where they're at in that aspect. We've been able to upgrade the switches and a lot of the back end stuff with E-rate and with Teach in the past. So hopefully it's close to zero cost for the school districts. We've also created some various contingency plans to help with hopefully any incidents, but if something happens and we're not available, they can look at the contingency plan to hopefully be able to, rectify some issues like servers down or power outage, or not all security related, but just various ones that we might really come into. And along with the security assessments that Teach has helped provide funding for, through WeRock, we were able to get all of our schools scheduled on the security assessments and penetration tests for everybody. And that's coming this fall. Unfortunately, with the limited staff and time and everything, we're not as proactive as we possibly can be, but we're trying to make better strides and getting everything scheduled and as far as along as we can with what we have for resources.
Yeah.
Great.
One,
Go ahead.
I was going to say one tool that we've used to help build that understanding from multiple stakeholders is the Future Ready framework. When we did our comprehensive library and technology planning, some of the gears in that framework deal with robust infrastructure and data and privacy. And so that's been something that's helped us move the conversation forward in regards to budgeting.
Great, thanks for calling that out. And Corey kind of mentioned E-rate, and I'll just remind everyone that next year, little dance, we all get to have district budgets, and that'll be really helpful when we start to spread those funds around. And it's awesome that the FCC and our government have committed this to be permanent for the future. So knock on wood, it doesn't go away for a long, long time, and we can certainly use those funds, as we see fit across our districts. So Annette, I'd like to kind of close out the question to you. How do you stay up to date, monitoring and budget and keep your data secure?
So staying up to date, Corey started to talk about this a little bit. There's all of these opportunities in our state. You've got the Governor's Cybersecurity Summit, which we always attend. It's a great place to learn what are the newest threats, what are the things that are coming. That's where I first learned about BitLocker and some of those tools that were out there. They talk a lot about Bitcoin, and MS Isaac is always there. It's a really good event. It's in the fall every year. No, is it this? Shoot, don't quote me on that. It might be in the spring, but we'll put some notes on when that cybersecurity event is. Brainstorm is another good opportunity to go and learn and stay up to date. The WEDL, we talked about that a little bit earlier, but they've got the March 1st event, which includes a morning speaker around hacking, and then an afternoon tabletop exercise. So very similar to what Rachel and Kevin are doing in their district, but for the state. So there's all of these great opportunities to learn and stay up to date here in Wisconsin, as well as national events. You've got COSIN, ISTE now has some of those pieces embedded that can really help you with getting your teachers on board with some of this. So there's different ways to learn. Additionally, I would say one of the best ways that I have to stay up to date is with you all. So people send us, this just happened to us, or here's a question, or how do you deal with this? And so whenever you push against us or send us things, then that gives us the opportunity to continue to learn and to grow, and then also to help you with those things. I'm going to talk again, and I'll probably say this at every session. If you have an incident, call that 1-800 number, because then we can start gathering all that and building out protections to help you and to educate. So that's one way. That's another way we monitor, is by people talking to us, by people sending us information. Then we also, of course, have the tools that monitor our network. We use things like CIS and NIST and some of those national standards. And then budget. Well, we have the same challenges around budget here at DPI. I'm sure you know that our legislature is not one to give tons of money away just for no reason. And so we are very careful with our budget. We just took a position and redid it when somebody left, and it's going to be our new data security position. We have an infrastructure security person, but this one's going to focus just on data security because it's an emerging need. And so we had to take a position from somewhere else and reshape it a little bit. So looking, like Rachel said, at what we have, what can we change, what can we do differently, looking for partners. We partner a lot with DET for exactly that reason. So Bill Nash and I coming out to CISA to speak, looking for ways where we can, use state contracts, use CISA contracts to save money. So all of those things we look at whenever we're budgeting around and thinking about our data security.
Great, thanks, Annette. So I'd like to just take a minute and kind of do final thoughts here as we kind of wrap up a little bit here. And we're going to allow a little time for our CISAs to have some reflection time. So Corey, and then Rachel, and then Annette, any final thoughts on our topic around data security today?
Yeah, I would just like to add that while not all CISAs provide the same services, it doesn't hurt to contact them to see how they can help you, and maybe it's something that they might be able to provide. I can't really speak for them myself, but I'm sure they're very willing to have that conversation with you.
Great. I would agree with that. All your CISAs are great partners. Rachel?
I guess one of the final thoughts is that I don't know what can be done to help with this, but building awareness for district administrators, superintendents, and boards of education to understand that this is a heavy lift and that it takes allocations of time and resources to address it, and we need to continue moving forward. So I guess that's an ask more than a final thought.
That's a good lead in to me, Rachel, and I appreciate that. Because of that ask coming again and again, I've met with the School Board Association, the ASA, the district administrators, and the business associates. So I've met with those 4 organizations, and slowly but surely we're going to start putting in just small tidbits in each of their monthly newsletters highlighting security and what you can do to help secure your infrastructure and what their role is. We're working on a top 5 article. We've rolled out the SDPC, and we will be presenting at the School Board Association, not the school board, at the School Business Officers. Ed and Jen Lotze will be presenting in March. I'll be presenting to the school district administrators in April. We'll be presenting at ASA. So we're getting into their newsletters. We're getting in front of them at their conferences. So I think as you said, it takes time and it's a step-by-step process, but we are starting, their organizations are committed to this and working with us on this. So we definitely have some momentum going in that area now.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, Annette. And, I think that calls back to how we started out the day. One of the earlier slides was it really is everyone's lift. And I really want to reemphasize that. And there's a lot of work to be done by everyone. But I think together we can get it done. And again, a testimony of that is the fact that we're all here today.
So before we move on, are there any questions in the document that need our attention before we jump to a break and the CISA is having a few minutes to chat?
We are looking for questions right now.
And there might not be any. I can't see the question document, so we've got some password management. Oh, so question, do you have a visual of the different layers that you just described? No, and I will now. So this is a good example of how when you ask, and Rachel has sent me emails before asking me for things. This is how we know what you need, and then we build them. So thank you for asking, and that is certainly not going to happen by the end of today, but I will put something together around that. The syslog capturing and cacti, we'll get that information from Corey, Kevin, and Rachel, and we will add that to our resources slide, just like in the last session things came up. So if you could send those to us, please, Corey, Rachel, and Kevin, then we can add them as resources.
Okay.
They talk about, somebody asked about how schools are managing password management tools. So here at DPI, we use a program called Thycotic. We have an administrative version of it for our high-level passwords, and then we also have a end-user version, 2 different versions that we use for managing passwords. Corey, Rachel, what are you guys using for password management, if anything?
We've investigated password management, and we have a few staff members that use the free versions, but we haven't implemented any CISA-wide or district-wide solution yet.
We're in the same boat. We have not implemented any district-wide password management solution.
Different boat. I wouldn't
So then, thank you for sharing.
Just invite people to write their answers to the questions
Yep.
like this.
Some people are putting their answers, like when they're asking what other schools are doing, right into the document. Thank you for that, because CISA 12 just said they use LastPass. When I worked at Teaching Books, we had a password management program also. And so, yeah, anything that you want to do with that one. The next one talks about MDMs and mobile devices, and it asks for some opinions about people using their personal devices over devices owned by staff. I think that is a personal decision. We have people here who will not use their personal phones. That's why we buy tokens. And we have people who will. It's very, I'm not gonna take a stance or make an opinion on that one. It's gonna get me in trouble. How can districts creatively use E-rate? So we talked a little bit about that. In common school funds for data security, I don't think common school funds can be used for data security. That would not be appropriate use of that fund. E-rate, do you want to speak at all to that?
I can't quite see the question. Are you talking about security specifically, or?
Yeah, security.
Yeah, I think, one thing I think Bill's in the room with us too, I would always say we want to use E-rate for the funds that it's intended for. So we want to be careful to not get outside of the bounds of what it's intended for. But I think one of the things that is happening in our nation's capital and even locally is that there is a push to have some of that included in E-rate. So I think really would be to be proactive and say that there is a need, and really try to stress that we need this so that it becomes an eligible service and not try to work around it. I really think we have to, unfortunately, stay within the rules, but it's great funding. It does a lot of great things and use it to the maximum of what we can use it for. Bill, I'm going to pin you on it. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, there's been a lot of pressure for the FCC to add network security devices to the eligible services list. They just issued a new order that doesn't do that. The newest eligibility list does not include that. I think Ed is right that if you have ways of applying pressure to get that to happen, I think this is a case where E-rate is behind the curve, and maybe things are changing so fast they haven't caught up. And as Ed warns you not to apply for funding for something that's not eligible, I agree. And what will happen if you do is you'll just get denied.
Yeah, but on the upside, we all hear lots of conversation around this in Washington, and so with a little bit of glasses half full, that we'll see that day where that'll come out and we'll have some of that for us. So any other questions?
The last one had to do with, is there a state rate for LastPass or any other of the password management software? No, we don't have one right now. And I saw that CISA could look at purchasing, and we'll continue to look at state pricing, but that right now our next big contract will be around vulnerability management, monitoring and auditing. So
LastPass, they reached out to me. They do offer discounted pricing. I think it's more one-on-one on the negotiation, but you can actually get some special pricing with them. If anybody's interested in Backupify for Google or whatever, Azure, there is special pricing on that. I actually just reached out to our representative, and it is substantial versus off rate. So I could actually share that if anybody was interested, because I believe it is available to any education in the state.
And we've got Corey's contact information on the contact slide for anyone who wants to reach out to him directly.
Great. Are there any more questions?
Nope, I think.
So what we'll do at this point is have a little bit of reflection from our CISAs, but this time we're going to give you 2 or 3 minutes, think it over, and then we'll call on a couple CISAs for a reflection. So we're going to mute our mics for just a second, and then we will call on a couple CISAs to get some reflections to kind of close out this session. All right, so we are going to go for reflections. Jesse, we're going to call on your room first. So I'm going to talk nice and slow while you get yourself ready and get your mic ready. But we'll take reflections from your CISA, and then we'll go to another one in just a second. But for right now, let's go to Jesse.
All right, you can hear me, yeah?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jesse.
Yep, no problem. I just noticed that someone in the chat mentioned Backupify. And then here, we actually went from Backupify to Cube. Say that again. Cube Backup, which is working with Google in the cloud and then actually storing it locally in a, like out of the cloud in a physical space. So it's not necessarily allowing you to like access it in multiple locations, but what it is, it's just a backup, and he's working with just staff, not necessarily student data. So it's archiving your Google Suite essentially.
Great. Any other reflections, Jesse, or from your team, or is it guys good?
You know, we're soaking it in. I think during lunch and everything, we'll have some more conversations. I think at this point, it's just kind of nice because we have multiple districts here, especially from rural settings. So I think the afternoon, based on all the information that we've been talking about, is going to lend to a pretty good conversation. So as of right now, I can't really say too much.
Awesome. Well, let's volley back over to CISA 5 with Corey and get some reflections from what's happening over there. So CISA 5, if you wouldn't mind sharing some reflections.
Well, I have my group in front of me, so do they have any stuff you want to add for reflections? Not here. As I've kind of talked about is we're not as proactive as we should be. Really need to improve that, but that's kind of stretching with districts' budgets and amount of time and money that they have available towards us. I think the assessment that we're doing is helping with that. Mostly because when we were scheduling this with them, a couple of the districts reached out and said that they are looking at wanting to purchase next-gen firewalls to maybe get that ready for that security test or be prepared for when something comes back at them and saying, okay, yes, taking it back to the school board and, you know, providing that information that, yes, we are being proactive with this with our school district and trying to protect that data of ours. This past year and a half, we migrated all of our student and financial software to hosted. It was a cost, but we were able to talk them into doing that. I've gone through that where our financial software was hit with viruses and getting that data off to Skyward and getting it fixed and up in the cloud. So I've had that nightmare myself personally, so I didn't want to go through that again. But otherwise, yeah, it's oh, sorry, Miss Aggie Salter would like to say something.
Aggie Salter. Oh, I just remember our CISA 5 director, Jeremy, has had me just send out email to all staff members with step-by-step directions, how to secure your email, how to make sure that you're securing your phone. So, you know, just making sure that you don't give access to your microphone or contacts to your third-party apps. So, and then whenever, you know, I always get notifications for KnowBe4, and, you know, there's always webinars that I attend, because whenever something happens, I get notification from them, and I always forward that email to all staff members for CISA 5, just so they can watch out.
Great.
Also, quickly, if anybody is a US Cellular customer, they do provide MDM through IBM, and they do have a feature that allows you to secure data. So if they have personal cell phones, I believe that can be removed through the MDM if it's like work related. That's all enclosed in a sandbox type of environment, but you'd have to contact US Cellular for more information on that.
Great. Thanks, everyone. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our last hour. We are at our lunch break, and we would encourage everyone to continue the conversations